The alarms were never supposed to sound. Not in the Galactic Council chamber, the single most secure place in known space. Not during a full assembly of the 5 dominant civilizations. And definitely not for this. A shrill, metallic pulse tore through the vast chamber, echoing against crystalline walls and ancient pillars older than most star systems. Conversations died instantly. Dozens of alien eyes, compound, luminous, mechanical, snapped toward the central holo display as it flickered violently to life. Emergency report, the system intoned. A battered scout vessel appeared in projection, its hull scorched, signal barely stable. Static crackled. Then a voice, trembling, distorted, barely holding together. Council, this is Recon Unit Data 9, we've confirmed the anomaly. The feed glitched. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the image shifted. And the chamber froze. Darkness filled the void of space, not empty, but crowded. Shapes emerged. Massive. Endless. Warships. Rows upon rows. Formations stretching beyond sensor range. Cold, silent giants of steel and firepower, each one dwarfing the largest fleets the Council had ever assembled. A whisper escaped someone in the chamber. That's impossible. The scout's voice returned, weaker now. Counting signatures, still rising, current estimate. Static surged. 300,000 Dreadnought-class vessels. Silence slammed into the chamber like a physical force. No one moved. No one spoke. Because every being in that room understood exactly what that number meant. Then came the final transmission, a sentence that would echo across the galaxy. They're all human. The feed cut. And for the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Council felt fear. The Galactic Council had stood for over 5 million standard cycles, an unshakable axis around which the known galaxy revolved. It was not merely a governing body. It was balance itself. 5 dominant civilizations formed its core, an unspoken symmetry that had endured for ages. The Varkal Dominion, masters of war, whose fleets had crushed entire star systems into submission before peace was ever conceived. The THRYNN Collective, a vast techno-organic hive, capable of processing entire planetary networks as a single mind. The Elisari Concord, diplomats and manipulators, who believed no conflict was unsolvable, only poorly negotiated. The Kethare Ascendancy, ancient beyond comprehension, silent observers who had witnessed the rise and fall of species long turned to dust. And the Orvani Trade Guild, whose economic reach bound the galaxy tighter than any military ever could. 5 powers. 5 pillars. Together, they ensured one truth remained absolute. No single species would ever dominate the galaxy again. Not after the last Convergence War. Not after entire civilizations had vanished in fire. Not after the lesson had been learned. Humanity had never been part of that equation. When they were first discovered, a fractured, chaotic species clinging to a single star system, the Council had barely taken notice. Their world was divided. Their technology was primitive. Their politics, unstable. They fought among themselves more than they cooperated. They were, by every measurable standard, insignificant. The Council had labeled them accordingly. Non-threat. Limited potential. Observation unnecessary. A footnote in a galaxy of giants. And yet, there had been anomalies. Small ones, at first. Human trade routes expanding faster than projected. Independent colonies appearing in harsh, resource-poor systems most species would avoid. Unusual industrial output from seemingly insignificant asteroid belts. Nothing alarming. Nothing worthy of intervention. Just irregular. The Orvani dismissed it as opportunistic growth. The Elisari saw it as a species struggling to find unity. The Varkal didn't see it at all. Only the Kethare had watched in silence. Because they had seen this pattern before. Long ago. And species that either rose or burned the galaxy trying. Decades passed. Then centuries. Humanity did not collapse, as predicted. They adapted. They unified, not completely, never perfectly, but enough. Their conflicts became focused. Their industries became efficient. And their expansion? Deliberate. Calculated. Quiet. Too quiet. It was the THRYNN collective that first flagged the deviation. Their sensors, constantly mapping energy fluctuations across thousands of systems, began detecting unusual signatures in human-controlled space. Massive energy consumption spikes. Sustained over long durations. Far beyond what their visible infrastructure should require. At first, it was dismissed as data error. Then it happened again. And again. Patterns emerged. Entire asteroid fields were being stripped, not chaotically, but systematically. Planets with minimal strategic value were suddenly surrounded by dense orbital constructions. Even more concerning, certain regions of human space went completely dark. No signals. No traffic. No data. As if they had been deliberately hidden. A proposal was raised within the Council. Conduct a deeper investigation. It was debated. Then delayed. Then deprioritized. After all, the galaxy was vast, and real threats still lingered at its edges. Ancient remnants. Unstable factions. Unpredictable phenomena. Humanity? Still considered manageable. Until one incident changed everything. A Varkal patrol fleet, small, routine, unremarkable, crossed briefly into an unmarked region near human territory. It was a navigational error. A minor one. The kind that happened thousands of times across the galaxy. They transmitted a correction. Prepared to leave. Then. They vanished. No distress signal. No debris. No energy spike. No trace. It was as if the fleet had never existed. The Varkal demanded answers. The Council issued a formal inquiry to human representatives. The response came quickly. Calm. Precise. Unapologetic. You entered restricted space. You were warned. You were removed. No explanation. No justification. Just certainty. That was the moment the Council truly began to look. Not casually. Not dismissively. But seriously. Deep scans were authorized. Long-range probes dispatched. Covert observation units deployed. And what they found did not make sense. At first, it was just fragments. Unfinished data. Impossible readings. Mass signatures that didn't align with known structures. Then came the images. Blurry. Distorted. Incomplete. But unmistakable. Shipyards. Enormous ones. Hidden within asteroid belts. Embedded inside hollowed moons. Orbiting stars in tight, concealed formations. And within them, ships. Not dozens. Not hundreds. Thousands. Still under construction. The Council's balance, its sacred equilibrium of 5, began to fracture. Because for the first time in millions of cycles, there was a sixth variable. And no one knew how powerful it truly was. Or how long it had been growing, unnoticed. The deeper they looked, the worse it became. What had first appeared as scattered anomalies soon aligned into something far more deliberate. The data streams flooding into the Galactic Council were no longer fragmented, they were forming a pattern. And that pattern carried a single, terrifying implication. This wasn't recent. This had been building for a very long time. Reconnaissance efforts intensified. The THRYNN collective deployed autonomous deepscan probes, machines capable of slipping through gravitational shadows and mapping entire systems without detection. The Elisari dispatched covert observation vessels, cloaked in light-bending fields designed to evade even advanced sensors. Even the Varkal Dominion, impatient and unconvinced, sent hardened military scouts directly into the outer edges of human-controlled space. One by one, they began to disappear. The first THRYNN probe lasted 17 minutes. Its feed transmitted a continuous stream of data, resource extraction sites, energy spikes, unusual construction arrays, before abruptly cutting to static. No interference pattern. No weapon discharge detected. Just silence. The second probe lasted 11 minutes. The third, only 4. By the 7th attempt, the collective reached an uncomfortable conclusion. The probes were not being destroyed. They were being intercepted, captured, studied. Meanwhile, Elisari observers managed to get closer. One vessel, hidden within the radiation storms of a dying star, maintained visual contact long enough to transmit something the Council would never forget. At first, the feed appeared empty. Then the darkness shifted, and the stars disappeared. Not because they were gone, but because something vast had moved in front of them. The object that emerged was not a ship in the traditional sense. It was too large, too structured, too intentional. Layer upon layer of armored plating. Docking spires stretching outward like skeletal fingers. Construction arms the size of entire cities. And within its hollow core, barely visible through the gaps, something even larger was taking shape. A warship. Not yet complete, but already dwarfing anything the Council had ever built. Scale analysis, an Elisari delegate demanded. The answer came back, strained. Preliminary estimate, equivalent to a Varkal capital ship. A pause. Times 12. Shock rippled through the chamber. But it wasn't the size that unsettled them most. It was the implication. If this was one construction site, how many others existed? The Orvani Trade Guild, driven by necessity rather than fear, began analyzing economic patterns. Trade flows. Resource movements. Energy consumption. What they discovered turned unease into dread. Entire sectors of human-controlled space had been restructured around production. Asteroid belts weren't just mined, they were optimized, carved into precise geometric patterns for maximum extraction efficiency. Gas giants were being siphoned at rates previously considered unsustainable. Even barren worlds were repurposed, stripped down to their cores and rebuilt as industrial hubs. This was not expansion. This was transformation. Humanity wasn't spreading. They were rebuilding their territory into a machine. And at the center of that machine, shipyards. Hundreds of them. No. Thousands. A Varkal war strategist, one of the oldest still living, finally spoke the thought none wished to voice. This is not preparation for defense. Silence fell. Then he continued, his voice low and certain. This is preparation for total war. But against whom? That question fractured the Council more than anything else. The Elisari insisted it must be paranoia, humans reacting to perceived threats, overcompensating for their historical vulnerability. The Orvani feared economic collapse. If such a fleet were deployed, trade routes across the galaxy would shatter overnight. The THRYNN collective simply calculated probabilities. None of them were comforting. Only the Kethare ascendancy remained silent. Watching. Remembering. Because they had seen civilizations build like this before. Not for conquest. Not for ambition. But for survival. Then came the breakthrough. Or the mistake. No one was ever certain which. A long-range probe, modified, experimental, nearly invisible, managed to penetrate deeper than any before it. It slipped through sensor gaps, drifted past outer defenses, and entered one of the dark zones, regions where human activity had been completely obscured. For 43 seconds. It transmitted. At first, the feed showed nothing unusual. Then the data resolved. And the council leaned forward as one. They weren't looking at a shipyard. They were looking at a graveyard. Rows upon rows of dismantled vessels. Alien in design. Ancient. Some recognizable, relics from long-forgotten wars. Others, completely unknown. Each one had been torn apart, studied, and catalogued. Reverse engineered. Their technologies extracted. Their weaknesses understood. And in the center of it all, a single, intact structure. Not human. Not damaged. Preserved. Before the probe feed cut out, one final scan completed. A partial translation of markings etched into the alien hull. Old. Extremely old. From a language database barely understood. The translation appeared in fragments. Extermination protocol. Galactic cleansing. Cycle continues. Then the transmission ended. The implications were immediate. And catastrophic. This changes everything, an Elisari diplomat whispered. The Varkal strategist did not respond. He didn't need to. Because for the first time, he wasn't thinking about humanity as a potential threat. He was thinking about what could possibly terrify humanity enough to build something like this. The THRYNN collective processed millions of scenarios in seconds. Each one ended the same way. With a conclusion that sent a ripple of cold logic through the chamber. Humanity was not preparing to attack the galaxy. They were preparing for something worse. Something inevitable. And then, the final report arrived. Compiled from all remaining data. Cross-referenced. Verified. Impossible to deny. A full fleet estimate. Not projections. Not guesses. Numbers. Confirmed Dreadnought-class vessels, the system announced. A pause. As if even the machine hesitated. 312,000, and rising. No one spoke. Because now they understood. The scale. The intent. The time it must have taken. This was not a sudden escalation. Not a reaction. Not even a strategy. This was a plan. One humanity had been executing. Right under their notice. 4 centuries. And the most terrifying part? They still didn't know why. The silence that followed the report did not break. It fractured. Voices erupted across the Galactic Council chamber, overlapping, clashing, rising in intensity as fear finally overcame restraint. This cannot be allowed to continue. They are building a war machine beyond containment. We strike now, before it is complete. And risk provoking exactly what we fear. The 5 pillars of galactic stability, once perfectly balanced, now pulled violently against each other. The Varkal Dominion moved first. They always did. To wait is to die, their war strategist declared, his voice carrying the weight of countless conquered systems. No species builds 300,000 dreadnoughts for peace. Their proposal was simple. Direct. Decisive. A preemptive strike. Target human shipyards. Disrupt production. Cripple their expansion before the fleet reached full operational capacity. To them, it was not aggression. It was survival. The Elisari Concord opposed immediately. And if you are wrong, their lead diplomat countered, calm but unyielding. If this is not preparation for conquest, but defense, you would turn uncertainty into war. Their argument was equally clear. Open communication. Demand answers. Force transparency through diplomacy, not destruction. The Orvani Trade Guild calculated loss projections in real time. War, at that scale, would not just destroy fleets. It would collapse the galaxy's economic framework. Supply chains would disintegrate. Core systems would starve. Even victory would look like ruin. The THRYNN collective remained divided within itself, billions of minds processing probabilities, splitting into factions of logic. Some simulations supported immediate action. Others predicted catastrophic failure. All of them agreed on one thing. The margin for error had vanished. And still, the Kethara Ascendancy said nothing. Then, without warning, the chamber lights dimmed. Not malfunction. Not failure. Override. A signal had breached the Council's most secure network. Impossible. Unthinkable. Yet undeniable. The central holodisplay flickered. Reformed. Stabilized. And a human appeared. Not armored. Not imposing. No visible sign of authority. Just a single figure, standing calmly against a backdrop of stars. Every system in the chamber attempted to trace the signal. Every attempt failed. The human spoke. Members of the Galactic Council, the voice was steady, measured, neither hostile nor submissive. We are aware of your observations. A ripple of unease spread instantly. They hadn't just been discovered. They had been expected. You have questions, the human continued. You are afraid. No denial. No deflection. Just acknowledgement. The Varkal representative stepped forward, unable to contain himself. 300,000 dreadnoughts, he growled. Hidden production. Restricted space. Disappearing fleets. Explain. A pause. Not hesitation. Deliberation. Then the human answered. We will not. The reaction was immediate. Outrage. Shock. Disbelief. You dare. We will not, the human repeated, calmly overriding the chaos. Because explanation implies permission. Silence cut through the chamber like a blade. We do not seek your approval, the human continued. We do not require your understanding. We require only one thing. Another pause. That you do not interfere. The statement landed heavier than any threat. Because it wasn't one. It was a boundary. The Elisari attempted to recover control. If your intentions are peaceful, then secrecy is unnecessary. Transparency would prevent conflict. The human's expression did not change. Transparency, they said, is a luxury afforded to those who feel safe. That was the moment everything shifted. Because beneath the calm tone, there was something else. Something far more dangerous than aggression. Certainty. You are building for war, the Varkal pressed. No, the human replied. A pause. We are building, because war is coming. Before anyone could respond, the transmission ended. Cleanly. Deliberately. The chamber remained frozen. Then chaos returned. They are threatening us. No, they are warning us. This is manipulation. This is madness. But the debate no longer mattered. Because events were already unfolding. It happened at the edge of human-controlled space. A small fleet. Unremarkable. A mix of vessels from multiple council factions, a joint observation force assembled without formal approval. They weren't there to attack. Only to see. To verify. To push just a little further. They crossed the boundary. For exactly 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then space changed. No weapons fired. No visible ships emerged. No warning was issued. The fleet simply stopped. Every system on board every vessel failed simultaneously. Engines. Shields. Weapons. Communications. Even internal power flickered into silence. Panic spread instantly. Emergency protocols triggered. Backup systems attempted to engage. Nothing responded. Then the stars disappeared. Something massive had entered the system. No, not entered. It had been there the entire time. Hidden. Waiting. The first human dreadnought revealed itself. It did not move like a ship. It moved like a force. A presence. Dark hull stretching across kilometers. Weapon arrays silently tracking. Energy signatures so vast they distorted sensor readings. And behind it, more. Dozens. Then hundreds. Appearing one by one, as if reality itself was peeling them into existence. A single transmission was sent. Not to one ship. To all of them. You were warned. No anger. No urgency. Just fact. Then the demonstration began. A single beam, precise, controlled, lanced through space. It did not scatter. It did not flare. It simply erased. One ship vanished. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Gone. A second beam. Another ship. Gone. No explosions. No debris. Just absence. The remaining fleet attempted to respond. Emergency systems struggled to reboot. Weapons flickered. Engines stuttered. It didn't matter. Because within seconds, it was over. Where a fleet had once stood, there was nothing. No wreckage. No survivors. No evidence. Only silence. Back in the council chamber, the final data feed arrived. Unedited. Unfiltered. Undeniable. No one spoke. Because now, the truth was no longer theoretical. No longer abstract. The numbers weren't exaggeration. The secrecy wasn't paranoia. The warnings weren't empty. This wasn't just a fleet. This was control. Precision. Dominance. And for the first time, the Galactic Council understood something they had never needed to before. They were no longer the most powerful force in the galaxy. Not even close. The galaxy did not sleep after that. It held its breath. For the first time in millions of cycles, the Galactic Council did not issue commands. It waited. And humanity answered. The signal did not breach their systems this time. It was invited. Authorized. Unanimously. The chamber dimmed once more, but now there was no confusion, only anticipation. The holodisplay activated. And instead of a single human, there were many. Rows of them. Uniformed. Silent. Standing aboard what could only be described as a command vessel. Behind them, the void shimmered with scale. Not dozens. Not hundreds. Thousands of dreadnoughts. The image alone was enough to shake even the most ancient among them. But this time, humanity was not hiding. A different figure stepped forward. Older. Composed. Eyes steady with something far deeper than confidence. Galactic Council, the human began, voice resonating with quiet authority. You have seen our borders. You have tested them. No accusation. No anger. Just fact. You have questions, they continued. You deserve some answers. A subtle shift rippled through the chamber. Not relief. Not yet. But something close. The human raised a hand. The stars behind them changed. What appeared next was not a fleet. Not a shipyard. A map. The galaxy, or at least the known portion of it, unfolded in layered projections. Trade routes. Territories. Council boundaries. All familiar. Then new data appeared. Dark regions. Scattered. Isolated. Ignored. These, the human said quietly, are the places you chose not to look. The HFY moved for the first time. A slow, deliberate motion. Recognition. The map zoomed. One of the dark regions expanded. At first, nothing. Then, movement. Not ships. Not fleets. Something else. Structures unlike anything in the known galaxy. Organic. Mechanical. Shifting. Growing. A murmur spread through the chamber. We found them first, the human said. Another region. Another image. This time, clearer. A system, empty. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Consumed. Stars dimmed. Planets stripped. Matter gone. The Orvani delegates recoiled. Because this wasn't war. War left debris. War left value. This left nothing. They do not negotiate, the human continued. They do not communicate. They do not stop. A third region. A final image. A fleet. Alien. Massive. Advancing. And then. Human dreadnoughts. The recording began. No commentary. No narration. Just data. The unknown fleet moved like a swarm. Chaotic. Endless. Human ships responded with precision. Formation shifts. Coordinated strikes. Perfect timing. And still, they were losing. Even with numbers. Even with strategy. Even with everything they had built. They were losing. The chamber went silent. Not from fear. From understanding. This, the human said, is why we built the fleet. The projection froze. At the moment where the human line began to collapse. We did not build for conquest, they continued. We built for survival. The image shifted again. Back to the present. The fleet behind them expanded. Layer upon layer of warships filling the void. 300,000 dreadnoughts, the human said. A pause. You believe that is our strength. Another pause. Longer this time. It is not. The stars shifted one final time. And the council saw it. Not hundreds of thousands. Millions. Hidden. Dormant. Positioned across regions the council had never mapped. Supply fleets. Support vessels. Defense grids. Weapons platforms. An entire war infrastructure. Waiting. We showed you the dreadnoughts, the human said softly. Because you understand numbers. A step forward. But you do not yet understand the threat. The unknown fleet appeared again. Closer now. Advancing across multiple sectors. They are coming, the human said. No dramatics. No emphasis. Just certainty. And when they arrive. Another pause. 300,000 ships will not be enough. The weight of that statement crushed the chamber. For the first time, the Galactic Council, the 5 pillars of galactic order, saw something beyond their control. Beyond their power. Beyond their understanding. The human's voice softened. Not weaker. But human. We tried to fight them alone. A flicker of something passed across their expression. Not fear. Not regret. Memory. We failed. Silence. Total. Absolute. Then the final words. So now you have a choice. The fleet behind them ignited, engines flaring like stars being born. Endless. Unstoppable. Stand divided. The unknown swarm advanced in the projection. Closer. Closer. And be consumed. A pause. Or stand with us. The human met the gaze of the entire council. Every species. Every leader. Every doubt. And we might survive what's coming. The transmission ended. No interruption. No interference. Just truth. And in its wake. For the first time since its creation. The Galactic Council was not furious. It was afraid. The fear did not fade. It settled. For cycles, the Galactic Council had ruled through balance, 5 powers, equal in influence, equal in restraint. Every decision measured. Every action calculated to preserve stability. But now, balance was no longer enough. The chamber remained in silence long after the transmission ended. Not the silence of shock. The silence of realization. It was the Kethra ascendancy that finally moved. Ancient, deliberate, their voice carried a weight no other could match. We have seen this before. All attention shifted. Because the Kethra did not speak lightly. In the earliest cycles, they continued, there were species who believed themselves eternal. Untouchable. Secure. A pause. They were wrong. The projection systems activated again, this time controlled by the Council itself. Fragments of ancient records surfaced. Ruins. Dead systems. Extinction events barely understood. Patterns. The same patterns humanity had shown them. The same silence in regions once filled with life. We did not understand it then, the Kethra said. We chose not to look deeper. A faint shift in their tone. Not regret. Something heavier. And we survived, only because it did not reach us. That truth settled over the chamber like gravity. Because now, for the first time, it would. The Varkal Dominion rose next. The same war-driven force that had demanded immediate attack now stood, still. Measured. You built this, their strategist said, his voice no longer filled with anger, but respect. Not for conquest. The human transmission replayed briefly in their mind. We built for survival. The Varkal lowered their head, a gesture none in the Council had ever witnessed from them. Then we were wrong. It was not an apology. It was something rarer. Acknowledgement. The Elisari followed. Their diplomatic composure remained, but their tone had shifted. Less control. More honesty. You chose secrecy, they said. You chose isolation. A pause. Yet now, you choose to share the truth. Because that was the part none of them could ignore. Humanity could have remained silent. They could have continued building. Preparing. Waiting. Instead, they warned them. The Orvani Trade Guild processed the implications not in emotion, but in outcomes. War was coming. Not hypothetical. Not avoidable. And yet, there was a path where something survived. Cooperation yields higher survival probability, they stated simply. Even the THRYNN collective, billions of minds acting as one, reached a unified conclusion. Rare. Significant. Alliance, optimal. For the first time since the Council's creation. All 5 powers agreed. But the final decision did not come from logic. Or fear. It came from something unexpected. Understanding. Because in that moment, they finally saw humanity clearly. Not as a fragmented species. Not as an unpredictable variable. But as something else entirely. A species that had looked into the dark. Seen what was coming. And instead of collapsing, they prepared. Relentlessly. Quietly. For centuries. Not to dominate. Not to rule. But to ensure that when the end came, they would not face it unarmed. The Council chamber lit once more. This time, by their own command. A unified transmission was prepared. Not a demand. Not a negotiation. A response. When the signal reached human space, it carried no hesitation. We understand. A pause. Then, one by one, the 5 pillars spoke, not as separate powers, but as one. We will stand with you. The reply came faster than expected. No delay. No debate. The same human figure appeared once more. For the first time. There was something different in their expression. Not just certainty. Relief. Then we begin, the human said. No grand speech. No celebration. Because there was no time. Across the galaxy, fleets began to move. Shipyards shifted production. Defenses activated. Old rivalries set aside. And at the center of it all, humanity. Not as rulers. Not as conquerors. But as the species that had done what no one else had. They had been afraid. And turned that fear into preparation. And now, because of that, the galaxy had a chance. History would remember this moment, not as the rise of humanity, but as the moment the galaxy stopped underestimating them. The five great powers had ruled through balance. But humanity had introduced something new. Preparation. They were not the strongest. Not the oldest. Not the most advanced. But they were the only ones who had seen the storm coming. And built a shield before it arrived. As the first joint fleets gathered at the edge of the dark regions, one truth echoed across every system. They thought humanity was weak. Until humanity decided to be ready.